Canadian aircraft has detected underwater noises in the search for the missing Titanic submersible, while the crew inside has only 20 hours left. I brought in former Coast Guard spokesman and expert James Judge to break down the latest.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, sir. So happy to be here. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I'm Andy Signore, and yes, I'm here with James Judge, former Coast Guard spokesman, decorated war veteran, served in Iraq on a U.S. Coast Guard cutter in 2004, worked numerous crashes, plane you have seen it all, sir. You're also a friend. You've helped me with numerous PR experts. So happy to have you back on. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on, Andy. How are things going?
Well, I mean, I wish I had you on a better circumstance of a show. And this is a serious topic, and we talked about it yesterday live. I'm having a lot of feelings on this because there's a lot to digest in this story. But I wanted to bring you on because I know you have clear years of Coast Guard experience as a spokesman and working with them, and you know what this situation is like in these moments, how quick, how important it is. The Coast Guard really is there for all maritime incidents that happen. You guys have to go there to help save these people. I want to get your initial thoughts before we get into the latest. What are your feelings on this search? Do you think it's moot at this point? Are you still hopeful? What are your reactions to this submersible underwater?
Sure. I mean, I'm eternally optimistic, especially while the Coast Guard is searching. The U.S. Coast Guard has a policy that they do not conduct search and recovery operations. They conduct search and rescue operations. So while the Coast Guard is searching, there is still hope. I would anticipate that they're going to continue to search until they believe that the likelihood of survival is not good or unlikely at that point, and then they would look at suspending the search, barring any other evidence or maybe a debris field or something that would indicate that there is a reason for them to suspect that someone may be alive or well. Then they would resume searching. But I don't think we're going to see that suspension until at least tomorrow. It sounds like the Canadian services, you've got multiple aircraft overhead, U.S. Coast Guard aircraft, Canadian aircraft, the Coast Guard from the United States has been provided from Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Canadian aircraft that's been flying, I think they've had a P-8 flying that dropped in some sonar equipment that has been listening underwater, and they've detected noises now. So we've recently heard that there's been some government documents that show that they've detected noises at 30-minute intervals. Which is something it's definitely a positive sign that, that's not normal, that if you're getting it every 30 minutes, there's likely somebody banging or clinking is what it sounds like that's being detected from that sonar. And noise travels a lot better underwater than it does through air, shockingly. So it's something that they're listening for. They're paying attention to what's going on out there. They're also looking at a large area. When you're dealing with something like this, you're looking at deep sea currents. Your computer models are looking at deep sea currents. You're looking at surface currents, which could be a lot different than what's happening under the ocean at that depth. And they're looking at computer models to calculate all that. They've probably placed a datum out there, which they are looking to fly over, and they have called in, I'm guessing, Good Samaritan ships. This is typically what happened if you're in the Coast Guard. You put out a pon-pon and you'd hail all vessels in the immediate area to go to that area and start searching as well if they're capable of it. The question you asked about being hopeful, though, I am hopeful. I think that I've seen crazier things, maybe not as crazy as this, but I've seen really crazy situations where you would think that there's no chance for survival, and we've rescued folks. Then I've seen other cases where you think there should be every chance of survival, and it turns out the other way. So I'm cautiously optimistic. We do know that it's probably I don't even want to put a chance on it. It's probably very slim chances, but maintaining that hope and that optimism, I think the Coast Guard could pull it off. Hopefully. Go ahead.
Well, you're alluding there to what I wanted to ask. I'm glad. I want to be hopeful. I'm trying to be hopeful. But this is a 1 in a million shot, right? I mean, probably 1 in a billion shot. Have you been in rescues like this? Like, when it's underwater, I imagine that makes this whole thing so much more difficult. But even if it was floating above the water, right, we'd still have a difficult time trying to locate that quickly, correct?
Sure. Well, and I'll explain that. So there's the depth that it's at is unprecedented in terms of a rescue. That I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any situation where we've seen something like this at a depth of this depth, where we've had to rescue someone from that depth. That, as far as I'm aware is completely unprecedented, has never been done before. Think about this: more people have been to space, more people have been on the space station than have been to see Titanic. So the likelihood of getting someone down there to rescue them is very unlikely if they're at that depth. The hope would be that they were able to jettison weight or to remove the ballast or release the ballast. In a submarine, you're looking at whether or not if you're gonna descend, you're gonna decrease your buoyancy by adding weight or taking on water onto the vessel, and then you could discharge the water and you can maintain neutral buoyancy, or you can increase your buoyancy to ascend if you wanted to surface. In this case, we would hope that they could jettison weight to surface. But then when you're talking about the surface too, you're talking about an area that is absolutely massive. I mean, this could be by today 1,000 square mile search radius that we're looking for this thing. And you're looking for a 20-foot, 21-foot vessel that's not shaped like a normal vessel, that's a white color in appearance, that is going to be, that I read yesterday, the current sea state out there is about a 3 to 4 foot chop. That means 4 feet from the top of the wave to the bottom of the wave. And the ocean just looks like white and blue at that point all over the place. It's very difficult to spot anything. Even if the ocean was completely flat calm, a 20-foot vessel in 1,000 square mile radius is going to be difficult to spot from the air.
So they should have painted it yellow or something at least to try to help. That's probably another part. I mean, that's another thing I wanted to get to. It sounds like, yes, it's going to be incredibly difficult to find it above, let alone in the depths. On top of that, there's all this information coming in that there was insufficient prototype testing on this vessel in the first place. There's talks about the CEO, who's alleged, I guess, in there, was sued for fraud previously after trying to get money for saying this vessel when it wasn't ready previously. There's a lot coming forward about the shape of this ship. Does it surprise you to hear all this and that this was allowed to be going underwater? What are the laws of that?
Well, I think it's shocking that they were allowed to perform the way that they did. And I don't even know if this is legal the way they were doing. It looks like they were trying to skirt some laws. If you were to conduct a charter vessel, right? If you were to take people out on a charter vessel, you're required to have a captain's license, a 6-pack from the Coast Guard, at a minimum, to take somebody out on a small boat. If you wanted to take people out, for the day fishing, you have to have licensing from the Coast Guard. You have to have passed tests. You have to have certain safety equipment aboard. A regular vessel out on the water has to have a fire extinguisher, flares, life jackets, sound producing device, all these different things. So it is a little unique to me that everything that we keep hearing from this is that these people don't have any safety equipment. They don't have there wasn't a lot of emergency planning. You would think that there would be a way for them to jettison the ballast, jettison some weight and surface, and then for a way for them to be able to open it up from the inside. And it sounds like that's not possible. I think, going forward, the government is clearly going to investigate this. The Coast Guard is going to investigate this. They're going to look and see what happened. And there's definitely a lot of areas for improvement. I think this organization, the way that they were operating by, I don't know how you call it, like research tourism, where they were calling it, a research assistant, but really these are billionaires that were, participating in a fun adventure.
Civilians, right? Customers.
Right. Not scientists. Which this whole company, the way that the CEO runs his company is unique. He's on record saying that he could have hired 50-year-old white guys that were experts from the former military guys, but he didn't think that would be inspirational. So he decided to hire, 26-year-olds that knew stuff. It's like, why are you upset about hiring somebody that is? I'd rather have the expert from an age standpoint. I don't care what their skin color is. I don't care what gender they are. I don't care about any of that stuff. Like, I want the person who's most qualified. If they're going to design something that I'm going to go down 13,000 feet in, I want to know that I'm going to be safe. So there are definitely some questions related to the CEO of OceanGate. Where is he, by the way? Has anybody heard?
He's in it. He's in the ship.
He's in it? Okay.
Yeah. That's what they've said. I think they've confirmed he's one of there's 4 passengers. And then he's the 5th passenger that's in there. Hey, one question I did have that I don't know if you know the answer, like when we were talking about this in the live, like, I have air tags for my luggage, right? Like, is there not a device that exists yet that the Coast Guard knows of that you can plant on to even see it if it lands deep in the ocean? Or is that just something we're unable to track? Like, it blows my mind that we can track the spaceships, we can call the spaceships in space, but we can't, 2 miles deep in the ocean, we can't track that with any sort of device or technology that we have?
I'm not an expert in transmissions of electronic frequencies and all that. I would assume that there is that capability. It's probably not commercially uh, as accessible as something that is more commonly used. I'll give you an example, and every one of your audience members out there that has a boat should have one of these. It's called an EPIRB, an emergency position indicating radio beacon. They also make a PPIRB, which is the personal one, and you can carry it on your boat. If you get into trouble offshore, you flip the button, a signal goes up to a satellite, and the Coast Guard, the ready helicopter at Air Station Clearwater, Air Station Miami, Elizabeth City, wherever you're at in the country, the ready helicopter, gets in the air, they fly out, and they will come, either drop you a life raft, pick you up. Depending on where you're at, that EPIRB will save your life, and it's like $200. It's a no-brainer to have that. At this depth, I mean that I don't think would work. You lose as you get to that depth. You lose light, you lose daylight. It's pitch black down there. So I'm guessing that a transmitter like that probably wouldn't reach a satellite. But I don't know what kind of beacon that you could have to potentially transmit in that kind of depth.
Right.
The
Or you need to
noise
ping
is, I
it
think,
to
the most.
a ship that's nearby, right? You're probably pinging to ships to at least try to keep it there. It's fascinating, or it's insanely expensive, but it does seem like if we're going to have these sort of vessels, they need to solve that technology, no?
I mean, well, like I said, there's a lot of safety protocols I think they could look at. Certainly, the ability to transmit messages back and forth to shore. Certainly, the ability to have a geographic position locating beacon of some sort. All of those things would certainly be helpful. Having an emergency, even if it's a sound producing device, that would be able to indicate to when they're looking at sonar. I mean, you go back to like old movies of like the Soviet era where everybody had to be quiet on the submarine. You're a big movie fan. What was it? The Hunt for Red October and
Yep.
U-571, right? Like everyone was quiet because they were trying to not be heard. In this case, you would imagine that if you're in a submarine, that somebody would have planned for an emergency, and it doesn't seem like they did that at all, which is kind of shocking.
Yeah.
Especially if they were going to have tourists on board. That's the part that I don't understand. I think you will see the Coast Guard investigate this. There will be an incident investigation, and then there will be likely rules put forward going, from here on out to say this is how you need to operate. You need to have this type of equipment on board if you're going to do this. But
Well, I mean, I want to get you, since we have you here as we wrap up this conversation, just like obviously the clock is huge right now, or under 20 hours. That's what's making this story so terrifying. And even here, you can sort of see the depth of where they're at. It's wild. How deep is this wreck site? I'm pausing on this screen because it is wild to see how deep this is. And that begs the question of, we have 20 hours left of air. From everything we've heard, we can't even lift this thing up, and then suddenly the air works. You got to lift it up, and then you got to unseal it, and then there's a lot of pieces still in play to get it. You also got to lift it out of the ocean. Do you think we actually have the capabilities? They're saying now, critical equipment has arrived now for these last chance efforts. It does seem like everyone's trying their damnedest to put on, the effort that they can. But I'm just curious, like the reality, like I've seen a lot of these Navy veterans on social media out there, worked in subservice people, and they're lost. There's no way to locate it, even if we could, not to be done in time. The idea of submarine rescue is a joke. We all know if it went down, we were not coming back. The U.S. Coast Guard does not do sub rescues. The Navy does, but not at 10,000 feet. Sub rescue is just something we were told could be done so politicians' parents would think it was safe. But it's sad, but these people are gone. Like, do you have any insight on that? Is this, I know we're trying to be positive. I don't want to be, but is this a lost effort, you think? Or is, I guess, obviously the Coast Guard wants to always go out there and do the best they can. There is a 1 in a million shot. We hear that ping and it happens. But do you think this is is a hard thing to find? No?
like I said, this is unprecedented in terms of from the Coast Guard standpoint of trying to rescue the submarine. That is not something that is common, especially at this depth. It's not something that happens. Even the Navy, while they can do sub rescue, they're not doing sub rescues at 13,000 feet. I don't know. A lot of that information is classified on a need to know basis of how deep our our subs can go, but they typically don't operate at the same level that research subs are doing. This research sub is far below the safe operating area of a U.S. nuclear submarine, at least from what we know from a classification standpoint. So even if the Navy knew where it was, could they potentially rescue it? Now, like you said, C-17s brought in equipment last night. They delivered them to a Canadian ship. That ship is on a 15-hour journey overnight to try to get there. And hopefully they get on scene. Hopefully they have a better idea of the position of this thing. And hopefully if they, they deploy this remote underwater vehicle, that they could potentially hook up one of these steel cables and drag it back up to the surface. All of these are difficult under the best set of circumstances. Add to it, a sea state that is a little choppy. Add to it the fact that we don't even know where this is in a massive ocean. And it's certainly unlikely. But again, I will go to my optimism being that the Coast Guard continues to search. They would not search if there wasn't a chance. And they'll continue to search as long as there is a chance of survival. You'll see them suspend if they think that chance has gone away. And, the other thing is, I'm a believer. I believe in miracles. And I would say if anyone else believes in miracles, pray for the family, pray for the rescuers, pray for the people that are on that boat, and pray that something miraculous will happen, because needle in a haystack is a understatement. I think this is more like a needle in a hay field. And that still might be a little bit of a estimate there. So I am eternally optimistic. Like I said, I've seen crazy things happen that you think we would have never rescued that person, or we would have never found that person. We found people that have fallen off of cruise ships in the middle of the night without a life jacket. We pulled them out of the water. It's exceedingly difficult to find a human being out there, let alone it's a 21-foot vessel. If it was somehow able to get to the surface, all of those things are things that we can hope for, we can pray for. Time will tell, and I remain optimistic, but cautiously optimistic, and not, I guess, without just understanding that it is still unlikely.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it is the energy you got to keep. It's frustrating because I know some people are annoyed that there's like a real reality check to this, which is these people signed up for this, very risky task, adventure, whatever you want to call it. They signed waivers that that made it clear that this was possible of death. I'm more angry at the Ocean Gate place, like the fact that how much were they really told? Were they sold a bill of goods? To me, after hopefully we do find these people, but either way, I hope there is an investigation in this company and we look into stopping this, because it's just absurd at any cost that we're putting these people, civilians, in this risky of a place in these vessels that aren't even checked by any agencies. It's beyond me. Go ahead. Final thoughts. Yeah, go ahead.
No, and on that, I think, I was talking with a friend of mine who actually was a part of and led multiple expeditions to the Titanic. And he's been down there numerous times. And one of the things he had told me was that they have been privately talking about this specific company and this specific vessel, and saying for 2 years that it was unsafe. This is a different design than the Alvin and the Mir and the Russian Mir subs and some of the other research subs that are out there. There's only a half dozen subs in the world that can do this sort of thing. And there's been some criticism of the design of this specific sub. So I do think that the investigation will tell us a lot more. But I'm going to maintain hope, optimism, and I really do hope that the Coast Guard, along with our partners, the Canadian Coast Guard, the Navy, the Air Force. I mean, you have the Air Force C-17s flying rescue equipment in, all these private organizations. I mean, this is a massive effort. There's a unified command that's been set up and established in the Boston area. And all these different entities have come together and they're working. You have experts from all over the world, from NOAA, from every possible expert out there that knows something has been called in. So if there ever was a chance to find somebody, this is it. And, the other thing I'd say, some people say, well, this is a waste of money. We are going to learn so much from this effort, regardless of whether or not we find this thing. We're doing things that have never been done before, and we're going to learn from that, and we're going to learn potentially how to do things in the future. So there is no harm in trying to save people as long as they're still alive and there's a likelihood that they're still alive. I think that we should, use every effort possible to try to save them and get them if that's possible. So
I love the positivity. You're turning me as well. There's a part of me, a cynic in me, that's just frustrated at these people. What were you thinking? Why would you do this? Why would you spend money on this? You knew what you were doing. But yes, we got to do our best to solve this, to find it, and hopefully learn from it. Thank you for being here, James. Always a pleasure. Guys, go to judgepr.com. You can learn more about James, all the amazing things he does. And if you need a PR firm, man, they're a great one. Judgepr.com. And you can find James Judge all over social media. Always a pleasure, buddy, having you here. Sending you all the best. Guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for all alerts as well. Smash that like button and leave a comment down below. There will be a presser later. I suspect it's going to be more of the same, but we'll keep you guys updated. So make sure you hit that bell to get notified and stay tuned for more updates here on Popcorn Planet.